Hey team, how we going? It's Kaz from In the Trenches with Kaz. Let us know what the sound is like as we're about to go live on what is maybe considered one of our first sort of shows, which will develop, create some LORE law, and maybe touch a few more topics other than just military, which is starting to get bloody boring, to tell you the truth. I've lived it for 50 years. I understand this is you on the starting block, but I still need to have a rest myself. I used to know a guy whose last name was Newbie. That's not a good name, especially in the dating. Guys and gals, before we get into it, before we put the time up, didn't we? Let's get straight to the introduction so you can see what today's about, and welcome all. Hey team, how we going? It is Kaz from In the Trenches with Kaz, and this is the introduction to your Friday night expose of uno, dos, tres subjects. Them should find a way into your heart or your mind and find that you might join our community by subscribing to it, or finding something that has a little bit of purchase within your brain, something you find interesting, with the first subject being the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Is there anything we can do about it? Can it be solved? What are the underlying issues? Is it worth us helping? Should we be going to Europe? And how many people would be willing to lose to try and help a country on the other side of the world? Again. The second one will be modern dating, the pitfalls that lie within, what you can do, what you shouldn't do, and what you should be careful of as you delve into the changing of this new world might ultimately be the burning of Rome as we speak. And the final bit will be on the JTAC, the Joint Terminal Attack Coordinator, as opposed to the CCT, the Combat Control teams that are part of Force Squadron Air Force Australia, okay, that have put out an expression of interest that want to see if anyone wants to come over and join their SOCOM community as we build relationships with our coalition partners, but also prepare for the next conflict, whether it be asymmetrical or conventional. Join me tonight. Let's have a laugh. And if you say anything that's beta, you're going to get branded the beta male. Watch for it, laugh at it, and enjoy your time here while you subscribe. Become a member and join me and help me through Patreon below as I help others that don't even know we exist. See you later for a coffee a month. Support the channel. Bye.
Can't handle the truth.
Well, that didn't actually put up the entire video. It cut itself short there, so maybe that's not a kibosh on the rest of it as we go. Guys and girls, we're talking about 3 different subjects tonight, as it's stated there. I'll quickly say the introductions, because that'd only be fair, and then we'll get through it. I'm just going to make sure I can't hear my audio input, because it's already a little bit annoying for me at the moment. Audio input. I don't need to monitor myself. Okay, so that feels a lot better already. Kane Higgins, what are you doing? Hey, Kaz and Lauren and team, Mr. Buckaroo, how's this evening? Kane, the Northern Parrot, the oldest rooster from North Queensland outside Mr. Buckaroony. There's no need for you to be putting your hand in your pocket for dineros like that, mate. You know, I don't expect anyone to ever have to make a donation. If you're going to do it, maybe do it through Patreon and then watch as we help others, and at least you get a phone call out of it as well. But thank you very much, mate, for the sunburnt cow. And again, not Sue cow. We'll give you a 1 strike for free where you don't get the beta male if you do something wrong. Lauren's here as usual. We've spoken to Lauren. We spoke to Deadpool, who thinks that he's Deadpool. It's actually a third personality. It's actually Robin, the one superhero, so to speak, that doesn't have any movies after him. And that's because Robin was actually the pilot of Epstein's plane. Daz, how you going, cattle boy? We got Brycey there, Battlefield 3, one of the first people on today, said that his uncle wants to go to the Ukraine. I don't understand why. The war is not imminent. There is not a fight that is imminent. There is a bolstering of the only border that has any friction of it from Russia on the Ukraine. The fighting that happens within the Ukraine, which is Eastern Europe, mostly comes from separatists that are there due to the fact that the borders the porous borders, I don't mean lack of money, I mean seep through, is 17% of the Ukraine sees themselves as Russians because they have come from the USSR, which fell down in 1991, and then gave up their nuclear weapons status so they could get dispensations from Russia. But everything is coded in corruption. And let me know down in chat whether this feels like maybe it's a distraction for something to look at the hand over here while something else is occurring. Because that's what it feels like to me. So let's put a little bit of a backspin on this one. So what we'll do is we'll get rid of the page here. What's going on? It's not playing the game here, team. Here we go. Let's get rid of that one and we'll whack this on. A little video we made a little bit earlier for you. So this is going to be a Ukraine theme in the back, in the background, and that is their colours. What a beautiful Ukraine. One of the things you're going to notice throughout this video that we created for your pleasure is, despite the fact that this is a very poor country with around $840 being the average take-home pay per month per family, no boats in Odessa, okay, it's still really clean, cleaner than Western Sydney. It's actually quite nice. Stickman, Carl P's here, Stevie Webb, good to have you here. I managed to look at a whole bunch of stuff that has actually got me bogged down to the point of almost freeze when it comes to this conflict. But some of the questions I'd love to ask you are, like I said in the introduction, what the hell has this got to do with Australia? Really, what has it got to do with the USA? What has it really got to do with NATO? And is this not just Russia protecting its borders? I believe it is. There's friction. It's been going on for eons. Did you even know what the translation to Ukraine means? Because I can tell you right now, borderlands. The borderlands, which means that this is something, a sad country, which still has a lot of happiness in it. Okay, this is the oldest railway bridge made of stone in the world. Not that one, the previous one. But it means borderlands, which means we are talking about a country that is in purgatory. Purgatory meaning it's in the middle ground. It is being the knot between the rope that was formerly USSR, but then also wants to now be European. So it's caught in between, and there's people in the country that want to be both. We've got Crimea to the south of Ukraine that used to be part of Ukraine that was annexed in 2014. That doesn't even touch Russia, but is classed as Russia. So the only way to get to that is also through the sympathising post-separatists of USSR that fell in 1991. Agriculture is one of their biggest exports, and at one stage, the Ukraine was actually classed as the breadbasket of all of Europe. There is poverty there, absolutely. There's a whole bunch of different things. I'm going to narrow these down really quickly so you understand what's going on. G'day, Luke the Fluke. Reddit stories. G'day, mate. Hey, Kaz, I'm off to basic training soon. Some tips. Got plenty of videos, mate. Let me get to you in a minute. Let's not distract me at the moment, but not too cow, he says to him, because this is going to go for 1 hour only tonight. Maybe we'll put another 10 minutes in for some other questions later. But I want to try and get Ukraine out the way in 20 minutes before we move on to dating, then move on to JTAC/CCT. So here's 6 of the reasons what I've been able to come up to, which is putting the Ukraine in such a position and allowing them to be exploited while they are dependent on the energy and the gas resources that are coming through to heat their country and allow them fuels, etc. So Reddit stories, thank you very much. Big thumbs up there. Where are we? Deadpool, just for thinking before. Okay, just for thinking that you were, what would we call it? Deadpool, not Robin. We're going to put this one up for you.
That's a beta male, not an alpha male. Beta male, yes. Beta male, beta male, not an alpha male. What a shame. Mommy's boy.
Okay, So that one will be there for anyone that shows any side of femininity, despite the fact they've got some tackle between their legs. Because at the end of the day, whether you believe in misogyny, actually we all do, understand that the fact is that one day men are going to be required to be hard again, are going to stay on whatever the symbolic is of the Titanic, okay, going out to face the bear, the lion, etc. The benefits of being the gender, one of two genders only, that is the strongest, as a summary, is that you have to take the claws at times, okay? And hopefully ladies maintain the balance. There's my medals. You can't see me face in that. Took me a long time to put my jacket on. So healthcare. Healthcare in the Ukraine is not paid for by the government for elective surgeries, which means you have to pay yourself for any elective surgery, and almost all of them have big families because they are also Orthodox, they are Christianity and Catholic, you know, large families, etc., which is fairly normal in agricultural-based countries. It means the more boys you have, the more they can help in the fields. There's no private ownership of land to allow you to progress either. And when someone does manage to get into a little bit of the corruption or get ahead, they tend to leave the country. So if we've got any Ukrainians out there, make sure you put a comment down there later. Mucho respecto. You know, love the cleanliness of your country and you're doing the best of a pretty shitty deal. Esulis, g'day mate, how you going? What do we got? Scotty, thoughts on the Boxer? Not on this one, mate. Armoured vehicles, you know, they're no more survival than any other vehicle, than the APC, right, or the Bushmaster, but they are air conditioning, and that's good enough for me. Well, bucket seats. If I'm not walking and I'm getting a lift, I'm pretty proud. So healthcare. So if you're in a poor country that has less than $1,000 and you are the poorest country, okay, in Europe, and you have a choice of someone getting braces or getting a new generator or a tractor, you can pretty well bet, okay, the healthcare is going to be extremely poor. And what that means is people can still die of things mortality-wise that you wouldn't die of in the West. So healthcare is a really big one. The second one is corruption. Naturally, when the loyalty of the country, you know, can go back and forth between Russian sympathies or that of the Ukraine freedom fighter, European sympathiser side of things, you can get a lot of conflict. And out of fact, in 2004, there was an election where a corrupt individual, I won't say Joe Biden, but someone similar, managed to hold on to power, you know, and what occurred from there was they gave over a lot of their NATO statuses and protections, and that ended up being pretty bad for their country. So corruption is happening at all levels there. War instability, you know, they have really had a hard time. They lost more than 10 million people under Stalin in 1933, so much so that when he actually chose to starve their country, it was an enforced hunger that was designed as a weapon to weaponize taking land off farmers so they'd give up their individual land forever to go towards communal farming. What that meant was he drowned them out. They had to hand over all food. And sadly and disgusting, one of the main foods was cannibalism. That's right, eating people. Finger licking good friends. And that happened there. And there's been numerous occasions. And then they were also attacked naturally during World War II by the German forces, the Axis, when they rolled in there and they killed another bunch more. Now, it goes both ways. The fighting has happened ever since. We saw that when the USSR fell in 1991, there was people that naturally wanted to stay Russian. There was people that wanted to go back the other way, and that was terrible. The pensions are very, very low, if non-existent for most. The mortality rate is significantly lower than other European countries, and women actually live 10 years longer than men because of the duress that's put upon their population. It sounds good initially. Okay, if there's 4 men for every 6 girls and you're good looking, you're probably laughing. But with no sexual protection, that's a lot of kids, a lot of corn you've got to make to feed them. Population is 43.6 million, and that has fallen from 51 million and they're expecting the population by 2090 to be down to under 25 million. Their country's population is falling by at least 700 people a day. 700 a day. That's a lot. That's a hell of a lot. Okay, why are they dying? From medical complications, also from war, right? From corruption, from immigration. They're just outstripping their birth rate, all right? The cultural mindset. Now, people can get upset about this one, but the cultural mindset is if you think life cannot get any better, then you tend to make the best of where you are. No expectations, no self-betterment, just sticking with exactly the same action, be a farmer of the farmer of the farmer, and just continue that rather than the education, the upskilling, the dare to think outside the box and do something different. And when that does occur, they tend to leave, which means the leadership, the genuine leadership of the country tends to be lost as well to other countries that take them on. So part-time work is a really big thing over there, which means there's no long-term benefits that would come with a career. All it is work for every hour, for every dollar, scrounge for what you can get. Generational poverty naturally is a massive thing there. You don't get a title like the poorest country in Europe for no reason, stuck between two potentially cultures that don't get along. And the class fluidity there, that is naturally lacking due to your inability to upskill your family into wealth, etc. Joshy Kingshot, problem is, think if Russia invades Ukraine, which they won't, the Ukraine, China will invade Taiwan, which they won't. So it becomes our problem. No, it's not our problem. Australia is not going overseas into Europe. Remember, it's the people that don't bleed that send the sons of others to go and bleed. Even though it was the assassination of Franz Ferdinand that caused, the catalyst for World War I do not believe that anyone will be going over, to assist this situation. This is saber rattling, a distraction, I believe. The fighting that's happening actually in the Ukraine is mostly from separatists, with Ukrainians. Basically, you could call it a civil war. And remember, those in Crimea, when it got annexed in 2014, they're not even connected to Russia. All right. The average temperature is about 7 degrees, which means it's not too bad. It's not too insimilar to Australia. Agricultural location there. I think there's a lot of media hype behind this as either just a distraction, something new now that COVID is dying out of the headlines. And I don't know, I hope they don't make it into something it's not, because Russia is saying, what's the big deal here? We're not trying to do shit. Ukraine is saying, we're not saying that there's a war coming or it's about to occur. But other countries can make a lot of money on war footings. Think of it that way. Dunlor and Daz, Black Sea. Yeah, there's a lot of, the Black Sea is a strategic location for both countries, actually. That's true. There was a whole lot of details here, and I've got a whole bunch of other, what do we call it? We've got a whole bunch of other sheets of the dynamics in the country, the differences between males and females, age, etc. Religions, with 71% being practicing Orthodox Christians and Catholics, etc. Okay. So, Ukraine, NATO, are they part of signatory? I believe they are, which means, if you don't know what we're talking about, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation, which means if you were part of that, attack one, attack all. 14 countries involved and a whole other bunches that are combined in that contract, which means if you attack France, then every single country has to defend France. But that's what we've always done for France, haven't we? Right? And that naturally goes along with everyone else. But there's people saying if something happens, well, in 2004, didn't Ukraine side with Russia over, even though it was considered corrupt, over the NATO? Is this conflict worth Australians' lives? No, it's not. Is there a solution? No, there's not. It's called Borderlands for a reason. It's a place of flux, where people are pushed into there, whether it be through poverty or whether it be through their migrationary habits. Remember, a lot of these areas from the steeps, they actually ended up in these areas because they followed the animals as they migrated and fed on the grasses, which meant they got stuck in these locations. And then from there, that basically became home when they put down roots. So there's not a solution. There's not a financial way of them getting out of that mess, despite the fact they have some really, really fertile, fantastic land, other metals and fossil fuels, etc. So first to second poorest in Europe, population 43.6 million and falling dramatically by 700 people a day. 700 or 7,000. Women outnumber men, which is a good thing. If you got your father's looks, go over there. Say you got $100 in your wallet, you might be laughing. 87% Christian or Orthodox, 71% believing. And women last 10 years longer than men. Do I think we're going there? No, I do not. Okay, I could not imagine a single reason why Australia would want to go there or feel obliged to go to Europe, okay, to go and help this situation either. You can't save everyone, okay, and there's enough Europeans who don't pay what they were meant to pay out of their GDP military budget for this solution. And what it means is they all have a requirement to be able to provide a certain amount of soldiers, okay, to the effort to protect a country in need. I don't think they're going to need to do that. Scotty Culpy, when you get accepted, lad, I'm still waiting for a call from my assessment day. Ukraine isn't NATO yet from memory, but Poland is. Okay, I thought they actually got into NATO, Joshy. When I looked up who's in NATO, I'm sure I saw Ukraine in there. They're not part of NATO, I'm pretty sure. Okay, if they're not, that might be the answer then. That might be just someone type it up now. Can someone find that out and put it in the comments below? Because it's a pretty important thing. Because if they are a signatory, that means they have to be helped by all other NATO signatories. I don't think he is Joshy Fawns. I don't think that Vladimir is a coward at all. I think that he'd be quite happy to fight people to their face. I think he got that position because he's an absolute beast. And he's been now promised that they can, that he will stay in power if he's alive until 2036. That's already been written off. Okay, so Ukraine isn't in NATO, says Esulis. Okay, thank you for that. I'd be wrong though. Let's see. No, not yet in NATO. That makes a massive difference then, because then there's no physical obligation to continue on. What do you think of the thought that they had to use cannibalism just to get through the starvation period where 10 million people died? Horrific. They were formerly known as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. That doesn't ever work for you, does it? And that was between 1922 to 1991 when USSR collapsed and they became basically autonomous. The problem with becoming free, even from the master, is that then you've got no one to turn to for help. Reddit stories. They are not a part of NATO. Russia doesn't want them to join. I don't think Russia would attack Ukraine. They don't need to. They don't want NATO being up against their border, and that is fair enough. Right? Because that's allowing people to get up there. And I believe that NATO was there for the first place to stop the red chip from rolling across Europe after its successes at the end of WW2. But they do want to join, okay? And Russia doesn't want them to, that's right. Biden may have an obligation to assist Burisma, though. Not sure. Righto, does anyone have any questions on that one before we put it to bed and go on to the next story? Jacinda Ardern is flipping dangerous. Yeah, she is. She's a commie. Yep. What country would vote for a pregnant woman? Wouldn't you think that she would have enough on her plate, to try and be a mama? Don't know. They can use proxies, and that's what's happening all the time. Okay, on the eastern borders, righto, with the separatists actually in the fighting. Over 20,000 have been killed in the last 20 years. She is horrible. Why is Vladimir Putin getting away with this? Getting away with what, Josh? Getting away with what? He hasn't moved across the border. Okay, this is people that actually want to be pro-Russia because of the good that came with it. It'd be like Queensland and New South Wales if you suddenly got rid of the border and said, we're just going to call that East Coast. Then people that would be forever call themselves Queenslanders. Okay, there'd be other people that always call themselves New South Welshmen. It's spot on, Kaz. That's what the Russians been saying from the start. They don't want NATO on their border. And really, if Ukraine is the poorest country, the last thing you want is a war, whether you're on the Europe side or whether you're on the Russia side, because no one wants the poorest immigrants in the world that are also unskilled labour to be pouring across your border. There's no benefit to that. I read the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline running through Ukraine towards Europe is part of why USA put the missiles in Ukraine. Well, Ukraine already had the biggest collection of nuclear weapons, post WW2, and they end up giving them to Russia for what they thought was going to be some special treatment. The West still needs to stand up to Russia if they invade it or beyond. Mr. Buccaroony, you're right, and that's the whole thing about NATO, but they don't have to if they're not a signatory to NATO. Because the last thing we want is another fight happening over what? The fights are going to continue to happen while the politicians are greasing their wheels with the blood of our own children, okay, being the fertiliser for future crops that, again, they'll tax heavily. If Europe gets involved, okay, but Australia shouldn't. Putin is a strong man. Trump could tell him the state of things. Biden is a... Sorry, it's moving too quick. Any thoughts on USA deploying 3,000 troops to Ukraine? I would say absolutely do not do that. I don't believe that as Commander-in-Chief that he has the ability to be able to make a decision other than the wrong one that could get us dragged into, as a coalition partner, a fight that we should not be in. It's like Russia setting up shop in Mexico to help with the drug, sex and humans trafficking. How would US react? That's right, Yaros, because that's US's job. They're the ones that do all the funding of the cartels. And we know that. Anyway, well, let's move on from this one. Let's put that one to bed, shall we?